Take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. A very good evening to you and welcome to year 2017, the 2nd of January in the year. And here we are today hosting our first show for the year 2017. I wish our viewers all the very best for the year 2017 and may you have a prosperous year. Tonight, our topic of discussion is the year 2017. Has the government begun its mandate as what was announced and achieved in the year 2015? Has the government begun taking its steps on the staircase, or is it still in the dark? The Rainbow Coalition, which was appointed by the people of Sri Lanka on the 17th of August 2015, is it facing a thunderstorm now? All this and more tonight on Face the Nation. Local government elections are due this year. What does it mean for the government and the people? Why is it so important to fight over a local government election? Then we have corruption taking place. A 3.9 billion rupee coal tender goes ahead with much objection. The Subgas Kanda modernization, the CPC goes ahead with objections. Who is benefiting? 2017, will some people get rich and the majority gets poor? Is that the year going to look like? All this and more tonight on Face the Nation. Let me introduce our guests this evening. Let's start off with Professor Rohan Samarjeva. A very good evening to you, Mr. Samarjeva. Nice to have you on the show again. The founding chair of Learn Asia. Joining us also this evening is Mr. Kirti Tandakon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. And joining us this evening also is Attorney at Law Shiral Laktilaka, a Coordinating Secretary of the President. A very good evening to you as well, Ms. Laktilaka, and thank you very much for joining us on behalf of your present portfolio as well as representing the government. Also joining us this evening is Professor Nirmal Ranjit Devasuri, joining us this evening for the first time on the show. Nice to have you as well on the show, Mr. Devasuri. So let's start off with Professor Nirmal Ranjit Devasuri this evening. Professor, year 2017. We just finished a very turbulent year 2016 in terms of politics, in terms of economy. 2017, are we still facing those crises, or have we put them in the past and we are looking ahead? The time starts now. 3 minutes.
No, I think you used the correct word, the turbulent. You know, it's really a turbulent time, and actually, I would like to go back to the January 8, 2015. So you mentioned about the popular mandate that when you look at the January 8, 2015 presidential election. It was a very unique event in the the post-colonial history of Sri Lanka. I mean, we have been used to change governments, and since 1952 until 1977, at every election, the governments changed, right? But actually, when you look at January 8. 2015 presidential election, it was different from the elections where the governments were simply defeated, right? So when you look at the very campaign that brought President Maithripala Sirisena into power, so that's not a campaign that was initiated and launched by a particular political party. In the first place, the candidate himself had no political party. So what happened was that there were various people's organizations, voices came together, form a popular alliance to the target was indeed, rather than the appointing a new government or president, the ultimate objective was to defeat the incumbent government, right? So that is the uniqueness. But what happened was that, so we have defeated a government, and it's not only a defeating a government. It was a, I mean, so there is the popular term, the regime. The regime is something more than a government, and also it's a particular political order. That order has collapsed, broken down. But the interesting thing is that the still a new order has not been established. So that is the problem. So that is why we are in a state of crisis. Right?
You say that a new order has not been established.
Yes.
Is the government really genuine, and is it transparent enough?
I mean, well, you can also look at from the from that angle, but I'm not referring to the genuineness of the government. So that doesn't matter. But what has happened is that the crisis is so formidable that the group of the people who are running the government cannot solve the issue. And it's a kind of systemic crisis from my the point of view.
What led to this crisis? Is it because the president contested under a common candidate logo? Is it because on the 17th of August 2015 there was a coalition government appointed by the people? What is the problem?
No. The crisis
is there. Okay, I do understand. If that's the case, what led to this crisis?
Crisis is not necessarily due to the fact that a new, government came to power, as you mentioned. The coalition, like with various points of view, various views, and so on. But also, it's a crisis brought about by the system that was defeated, right? So even the Mahinda Rajapaksa regime also a kind of manifestation of the crisis itself, right? So when you look at it, yes, it has the the popularity among Sinhala Buddhist constituency. But when you come to the other constituencies, like the ethno-religious minorities and certain social classes, the Colombo, the upper class and so on, it was not that popular. When you compare for example, election results of Hambantota and Colombo district, the Colombo, city area. So whereas Mahinda Rajapaksa had a very high popularity in Hambantota district, the popularity level in Colombo area is extremely low, right? So what does it mean? It means that the Rajapaksa camp is not a political coalition that could brought the entire society together,
and that's why
so there were serious fault lines.
Okay,
right?
Understood, Professor. So we'll delve deep on the points that you mentioned about the new order, as well as how to gain the popular vote in terms of increasing your popularity in the government in the present regime. Let me now focus my attention to Professor Rohan Samarjeva, founding chair of Learn Asia. Professor, interestingly, has the government got its priorities right for the year 2017? We started off the year today with an event, a gala event under the auspices of the President. You were also part of this event today. According to information that I received, you are also part of the commission in question. So tell us a little bit about getting priorities right for the year 2017. The time starts now.
This is basically about getting a vision of development that would possibly and hopefully transcend changes in political parties at the helm. And I think that's very important. If we want to reduce poverty, if we want to have a healthy population, things like that, I think we can agree on that. I think politics is not about disagreeing about everything. I think there's an attempt to bring the different interests together and try to align people to certain sustainable development goals. And when I say sustainable, I don't think you should not be understood as being narrowly defined in terms of the environment or anything like that. It's much broader. This is 1 year ago, the heads of state met at the UN and adopted these goals. So there's a lot of global support for that. And I think Sri Lanka, being a respected, possibly, and important member of the international community, we are trying to go along with that international consensus and trying to do something about it. I think there are too many of these broad goals that people talk about but do nothing. Here the government is trying to do something about it.
Professor, you say that there were many broad goals and people have not done nothing about it. Let's talk about the Millennium Development Goals that were adopted by the United Nations. Nothing concrete took place. 2015, the year came to a close. Then they brought in this new concept saying SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And then you have our president becoming a part of that particular vision.
You can't say that nothing happened under the MDGs. Quite a lot of things happened. Now, I mean, Sri Lanka, for example, we did quite a lot. I think we performed quite well on SDGs. I can remember being in Bhutan, and the government of Bhutan was asking me, what shall we do? Our infant mortality rates are off. We don't think we can meet the target. It is not even my subject, but they cared. So you see, these goals are about focusing attention on important things. Do we want our children to die young? No. I think it's a good thing that we reduce infant mortality. What these things do is focus attention on the important things that should transcend political...
But is that what we want right now as a country? Why not focus on Sri Lanka alone? Let's talk about the problems that we have at the grassroots level. Have we got our priorities right, Professor?
Well, this is not about, making the people of Indonesia healthy or getting down the obesity rates in the United States or anything. This is our stuff. This is our people, our priorities, our policies. I think that the fact that we are articulating them with international goals shows a certain confidence that we are no longer pariahs in the international arena, and the president shows that I think he was very clear. He said these goals are there, but we are going to translate them into our terms and do them our way. It's for our people, it's our children, it's our health.
In terms of moving forward, leaving behind the past, 2017, Professor Nirmal Ranjit Devasri said that it was a very turbulent time for Sri Lanka, and many people think so as well. 2017, how can we overcome these problems and move forward?
There's not a switch that is turned on the 31st of... all we do is turn a calendar. We don't actually turn a switch in history, right? It's just another day, like the day before and the day before. So the things that happened in 2016 will continue into 2017. In our country, we are not used to compromise. We are not used to broad consultation. We are not used to working with people of different opinions. We are used to making phone calls and telling people what to do, including judges and including politicians at the lower levels. That's been our feudal heritage. Now we have to talk to each other. We are not very good at this stuff. Sometimes we think that just because we are given freedom, we have to block the roads and ask the police.
Have we transformed ourselves?
These things don't happen easily because we are not, many of the times we are asking the politicians to transform themselves. I am asking whether our people are ready for compromise, for the give and take of democratic politics.
Isn't that why the people went to the polling booth on the 8th of January and voted out what they called a dictatorial regime and brought in what they felt was the change that is required by the people of Sri Lanka? That transformation was agreed upon by the people of the country.
Yes, and then in August they went to the polls and they split their vote, more or less, where nobody would actually get a majority, and big political parties had to work together to keep things running. So
isn't that part of the transformation that we're talking about?
I'm saying yes, but it's not easy to actually implement these things.
Now my question is, Professor, we've got the people having a clear vision. They want change. Has the politicians adopted that change that the people envisaged for our country?
I wouldn't agree with you that the people have a very clear vision. I think they didn't want what was going on earlier, where the president's children were having more power than people who had been actually elected and things of that nature. They knew what they didn't want, but are they sure what they want? Were they really for the giveaways that the government engaged in? Give 10,000 rupees for every government servant, give interest concessions for other people, do something for the elderly, just give away other people's money. The government doesn't have money. We're talking about a bankrupt government. and the government is giving things away to people because they think that's what the people want.
Thank you very much, Professor Rohan Samarjiva, founding chair of Learn Asia. I now move my attention to Mr. Kirti Thenakon, executive director of the campaign for a free and fair election. Year 2017, a few days from now, 6 days from now, will be marking 3 years since the election of a new president. Have we got our act together? Are we doing the right thing? Where are the corrupt being behind bars? Will we see some positivity in the year 2017 as far as corruption is taking place? Still, corruption is rampant, isn't it? Your time starts now.
When we go back 2 years ago and think about what exactly we looked for 2 years ago, I think the people had very high expectations on fighting against corruption. Then the reforms agenda was put on, and people was talking about, civil society was talking about it, and moreover, people looked for some positive changes in the society. But here, when we look back for last 2 years or so, now we are getting frustrated with same sort of practices continued under this present regime, this government. And even though it's a coalition government, we see that so much of uncertainty is coming on with various issues, very basic principles which was founded this good governance government. Something like fighting against corruption has almost grounded now. The more allegations are coming on daily basis against this government, against UNPs, UNP parliamentarians, UNP ministers and so forth. And it's also happening with the SLFP members, ministers and the government servants for that matter. And when you look back and think about what is the progress, what we received, what we managed to get during the last 24 months when it comes to the reform agenda, the election reforms are not taken place, which was much talked about, and the other issue, the constitutional reforms, there's no transparency whatsoever. All the discussions happening in the closed doors, and in weekly basis this agenda change, and someone comes out and tells something totally different against the ministers or the coalition members for that matter. And there's no very concrete program visible in this government. So that's lead to so much of uncertainty in a way. And in the other hand, the defeated factors, the Mahinda Rajapaksa people, the regime, the members, the corrupt people, the people who got so much of money behind them, and still the wheels within the wheels in this government is sticking towards the Mahinda Rajapaksa and their people. So in general, we see a mess at the moment, and it has coming in different ways, different colors, with different messages. We see some state Priyanka Rajaratne got resigned, and the people is looking for an election which was due last year, which has not happened. The Delimitation Commission report was rejected by the minister today, ironically, and we knew that the UNP don't want to go for local council elections, and there are some, even the civil society people are talking about, let's go for a constitutional reform.
The UNP to decide about the local government elections. It is for the president to decide.
I mean, as far as we know, it's the president and the prime minister both don't want to have the local council elections, and that's why this Delimitation Commission report was so much delayed. It was due last August, and then it was delayed to October, then it once again delayed to November 31st, and it was officially said by December 15th that report will come out. There was no translator, the facilitation was not down there. So ultimately everyone knew that this is a delayed tactic, and definitely there must be a very concrete way of addressing things. If the ministry is not facilitating, if that's the delaying tactic for that matter, and we are experienced today that the government do not want the local council elections to be taken place.
Mr. Tennakon, one of the allegations leveled at the civil society and people like you is the fact that y'all only talk about the problems that y'all can gain some popularity at. How far is that true?
I don't think it's true. I mean, civil society is divided to some extent, and some people who worked towards a regime change are now with the UNP or either with the SLP for that matter. But there are some segment of a civil society is working towards on policies which the good governance government promised during the election campaign, which is not happening
I'm posing
so
this
far.
question to you because you are one individual who has been very vocal about good governance. However, several months into the appointment of the new government, a very strong minister of the regime said in Parliament that you supported them prior to the election, and then you've never rejected that position either.
It's
in a very
definitely
open
that
forum.
at that time in January 8 for the change, definitely our actions on ground, our voice against corruption, our voice against the malpractices in different levels happened with the Mahinda regime definitely helped. That's why that particular minister mentioned that they gained a lot. Definitely we were talking about the policies and the practices.
But that's not the role of civil society, is it?
You can argue on that. If there's no huge voter education program or a civil education program, if we are not exposing these things at that time, definitely there was. We were talking about a society which was censored throughout. But here the issue, it might happen. It might help this present regime to come into power.
But why go to an extent to give you a post of that sort in the government rank?
It's not a post. It was proposed, and there were reasons not to accept that.
Right, thank you very much.
That's part of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keith Tennakon, for joining us this evening. He's quite vocal about this government, has criticized on a number of occasions on the very same show on the conduct and also on corruption charges that have been leveled against the government. The coal deal, the bond scam were some of them. Let's now move our attention to attorney at law, Mr. Shiral Lakhtilaka, coordinating secretary of the president. Mr. Lakhtilaka, why is it that the present government is so scared of a local government poll? What is your thinking?
I don't think so. If you look at the statements made by the minister and as well as the president, it is quite clear that government is very much committed to hold that election. And even the government has stated that in between April and May, the local government election would be happen. So this is a sort of rhetorics made by various parties to say that government is scared and government is not willing to hold elections. I mean, if you look at the sources, of this kind of things are emanating, look from where it comes. It basically comes from the joint opposition. Right? They want to show that government is scared and government is trying to dodge with holding of this election. That is not the case. There are certain practical difficulties involved with the Act as well as Delimitation Commission. Now, certain time took for the Commission to consider the appeals made by various parties.
Ms. Lakhtilaka, I just want to interrupt you for a second here. It all seems very systematic. I'll tell you why. Now, 4 p.m. today, the Minister of Local Government says that he refuses to accept the Delimitation Committee report as 2 members have not signed it. So that's the first story that we received. Exactly 10 minutes from that announcement, the Prime Minister is to meet the Delimitation Committee along with political party leaders on the 9th of January to finalize matters. It seems rather systematic.
You know, I heard what the minister stated over this meeting. He has categorically stated that the Prime Minister has no business to meet these delimitation committee members. That is one thing. Second thing is, now there may be people who are scared to face the popular mandate, but there are people within the government who are quite confident about facing the elections and getting the verdict. I mean, this is a very democratic government. That is what the objectives meant when we elected this government. The government has to face the election, whether it is favorable or not. So, my personal opinion is this government should go to the people and face the election and accept the verdict of the people. So, you can't forever, this is what Mahinda Rajapaksa did, you can't postpone or you can't manipulate with election system. If you are trying to manipulate, it will bring unnecessary repercussions to the democratic system as well as to the rulers. So, therefore, the certain section of the government believes that straightforward answer we have to face, and we believe that the new system is the best system to check the aspirations of the people.
Ms. Laktilak, I think you would be the best person to answer my next question. You were attached to the United National Party for some time. You were a member of the Provincial Council as well, attached to the United National Party. You criticized the UNP very heavily for many, many months.
And as a result, I was ousted.
And you were ousted, and then you stood with President Maithripala Sirisena. Now you are working as the coordinating secretary of the President.
Yeah.
Has a situation arise for you as an individual to get your job done as a coordinating secretary of the President? Let's say you've had to meet the UNP and the UNP have rejected your proposal. I'm asking you this because I want to get a feeling of working together from two different political parties, having an agenda, having a goal to win the local government polls. You have the SLFP and the UNP going to contest alone. Won't this complicate matters?
Yeah, now this question goes back to my friend Professor Nirmal Ranjit Devasiri's question. I would rather like to explain it in a different manner. Now, his answer to your question was that whether after changing the regime, the old regime or Mahinda Rajapaksa regime, whether this new order has been established. That is the question. So, my answer through that answer, I can answer to your question. That is that we are trying a new path, new order, which is based on deliberative democracy. Deliberative democracy is a very novel concept for Sri Lanka. That's why you asked at the beginning whether 2016 or 2015 was represented by turbulence. In deliberative democracy, turbulence is not a problem because you always tend to deliberate. When you deliberate with somebody else or some party, you always have a different opinion, opposing opinion. So that is natural. But a country and a society which was used to this majoritarian democracy and also used to monopolization or used to dictatorship, find consensual decision making is a problematic area. And also see that it's a sort of very destabilizing factor.
Thank you very much.
But this government is doing experiment based on consensual democracy with two parties.
Thank you very much, Attorney at Law, Mr. Shiva Laktilaka, Coordinating Secretary of the President. Let me introduce our journalists this evening. On to my right is Nadim Majid. On to my immediate left is also Attorney at Law, Sonali Wanagabadage, working as a journalist with Newsfirst. Also joining us this evening is Charita Fernando on our show. Let me open the floor for questions from Sonali Wanagabadage, Attorney at Law. Let's open the floor.
Thanks, Shyam.
It's all yours.
My first question is to Professor Samarajiva. I'll try to condense the question as much as possible. You're the co-author of a book called Apata Galapena Arthika Kramaveda, translated loosely into economic mechanisms that suit us. In your book, you speak about your take on how we can tackle with loss-making state enterprises and how they can be transformed into profit-making ventures. Today, the Island newspaper reported that a United States company called Development Alternative Incorporated has been chosen to carry out a mega project aimed at reforming Sri Lanka's private sector, which would work closely with the Parliament, independent commissions and related ministries. This is going to be funded at a cost of US dollars 13 million. My question to you, Professor, is how does this impinge on our sovereignty as a country, territorial integrity and constitutional reform? Are we allowing ourselves to be taken over by a funded program from overseas interests? And also, given the fact that the subject minister has no idea that this is taking place, when he was questioned, are we going to obtain assistance from an American organization? He says, we have not taken steps to obtain assistance from any American company. This was the Minister of Public Administration and Management speaking to one of our Newsfirst journalists. How do you view this?
So I guess I need to rephrase your question. You said to reform the private sector, you meant reform the public sector.
The public sector.
Yeah. I would begin by saying that we have a pretty dysfunctional situation in our public sector. We can be very proud that we have 1.4 million people working in it, but we have great difficulty just getting things done. I'm talking about, simple things like, for example, one of the critical elements of a government, of a state, is the ability to make laws. Now, we have a situation where our Legal Draftsman's Department has approved a constitutional amendment which says that the membership of the Elections Commission is 3 people and the quorum of the Elections Commission is also 3. I mean, this is an elementary error which just shows how incompetent we have become. The deterioration of standards, the incompetence that is pervading the government sector is a serious issue. Now, my issue is, I think definitely we need to do something about it. I have actually sat on committees which didn't actually go the full distance, but we were trying to give proposals on how to improve our public sector. Without improving our public sector, I don't think we are going to get anything done. Now, how the mechanics of this, you're just bringing various news reports at me. I'm not going to get into the details about things that I don't know. I would say that the Minister of Public Administration is the one who should be in charge of this, and he has to not just sit on his backside. He has to take concrete actions about improving the quality and performance of our public sector. Without that, I think all these proposals, we can think big thoughts. People think that just by changing politicians, you can change the trajectory of a country. Politicians come up with the big ideas. They may pass laws. Somebody's got to write them. Somebody's got to interpret them. Somebody's got to implement them. They are not the politicians who do that. So I would say that this is not a moment to be talking about sovereignty and various things. This is to talk about performance. Are we getting value for money? We have given these people extra salary. We have given them various concessions. But are we getting value for money? So I think we need a very serious focus on reforming the public sector. Whether, I'm not going to talk about the mechanics of this proposal or that. For that you will have, as you would appreciate as a lawyer, you will have to give me the documents, let me study it, and then I can respond on the details.
Professor, how do we go about reforming our public sector?
We need to focus on the most important things, and we need to shed some of the things that we don't need to be paying attention to. We don't need to be running airlines. We need to regulate our airspace. We need to regulate the airlines that come into our country, and we need to make sure that there is competition in the airline business. That's what we need to do. We need to make sure that the different ports, the different port operators, the terminal operators play by a common set of rules, that they are efficient, that the incentives are created for them to work together so that we become truly a transportation hub for the Bay of Bengal region, instead of trying to micromanage and do things that we don't have to do as government. There are all kinds of tools and instruments that we have for these things.
Dr. Devasri, Professor Samarjiva raised an interesting point there. Are we getting value for money? We've given the salary hikes to public sector employees. I'm sure you yourself would recall, as part of your own struggle during your time at the Federation of University Teachers Associations, to get great allocations for as a percentage of GDP for education, and also to have university lecturers and professors' salaries increased to be on par with, or at least to get close to an international standard. Specifically in the education sector today, with the salary increases that have been given, do you feel that there is value for money, that the government is getting what it's paying for?
Yeah, thank you, by the way, for giving me the opportunity to respond to what Rohan was saying. I want to say something about, and actually before coming to the the specific issue about this getting value for money, especially in terms of the allocating more funds to
for education
and all that. So about the issue that you raised about the public sector reforms. Well, I think when we are talking about the reform in public sector, so there are a number of ways to look at it. So I think the one of the hegemonic way of looking at this term, very elusive term of the reforming public sector, is to facilitate the free functioning of the market. So that is what so I think
and you're opposed to that?
Well, yes, I'm quite critical about it, because there are a lot of the gray areas. There are a lot of unanswered questions, right? For example, just look at the discussion that is going on with regard to this the so-called how do you call it, this development, the
special provisions bill, the development special provisions bill.
And so there are complaints that it is extremely difficult to get things done from one place, and when you want to invest, so that is true. There is a sort of myth about the market, efficiency of the market.
But Dr. Devasri, you say that there is a myth about the efficiency of the market. Do you think that the public sector in Sri Lanka now is running efficiently?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. The unit.
So what's the alternative if it's not market efficiency? What's the alternative?
The Professor Samarji was mentioning about the need to have a proper dialogue. He mentioned, he referred to the fact that we are not living in a situation where things can be done through a the phone call from a top one, and so the Shiral mentioned about deliberative democracy, and so therefore we have to discuss that we are living in an age where there are a lot of opinions. Just look at the composition of the government. It is the government is formed out of various views.
I'm going to pick your brain a little bit here, Dr. Devasri. When you envision in your mind the public sector, what is most important about the public sector? Is it the delivery of public services, or is it the people who are working in the public sector?
No, the first one. It is unquestionable. There's no.
So then,
right.
In Sri Lanka, do you think that we've got it
that
lopsided?
Is, what has happened? When a system evolves.
Of course.
Okay.
There is no argument that Sri Lankan public sector need a reform. But as he said,
no one questioned that.
No one questioned that. It's unquestionable. But what are the priorities? The sole criteria to me is not the value for money. there are certain other things like public good. Now, if you are providing public good, you need not to be that such a institution to be profitable.
But value for money doesn't necessarily mean profitable.
Yeah. So that's why there are so many areas where we have to come.
Now, don't you think that it is important to raise the basic question as to what is public sector for, right? Is it, when you say value for money, so you're thinking in terms of,
the delivery of public services. The people pay taxes to the government
Yes.
raises taxes with the promise to provide certain services.
So government is not a company.
I mean, it's not a company. It's not a profit-making enterprise.
True. It's also a regulator.
Things. So I think. So the bottom line is that the at the core of your question. So there's a fundamental philosophical,
Dr.
question
Delsi,
about the nature of the state, right?
The nature of the state is understood. Now, for example, I'm not saying that it all has to be profits. What I'm saying is that you have to be, for example, public transport. You can't have a grand metro system or this thing. It's going to be very difficult to make it affordable for the people and also run it as a profit-making venture.
Yeah.
So then you have to look at value for money.
Yeah.
As in, okay, how much of a loss can I take on this? It has to be there though. You have to do it for the people. So that's like Mr. Laktilaka was saying, an example of a public good. Something that maybe you can run it as a semi-private on a public-private partnership maybe. My question is, in Sri Lanka, when it comes to public sector reforms, have we sacrificed the focus on public services delivery in favor of the welfare of people working in the public sector?
Yeah, well, I get your question, it is well taken, because, that is quite natural when you are in an institution. So you have developed certain vested interest, right? Of course, you can say that, you are serious about, what you have to deliver and so on. At the same time, as a human being, you are thinking about yourself. So that is true. That
is
true.
called tragedy of commons.
Yes. So, so therefore, but we have to discuss these issues. That what happened is that when many people are talking about the public sector reforms, so they also not without their own, the narrow and limited agenda.
Mr. Ribu, we're talking about public sector reform. Can we do it with corruption rampant in the public sector right now?
I think we have to go to the Sonali's original
Private sector is,
the original question is that, the government, the good governance government has identified that reformist agenda is the highest priority, and the president, prime minister and the government itself has mentioned that reformist agenda will be given a very high priority under this government, and that's why we have identified the election reforms, constitutional reforms, public sector reforms, police reforms, reforms in the military sector has come to certain standards, and we should understand, and everyone knows that there's a huge amount of money is pumped into Sri Lanka to do these reforms at this juncture, and by doing that, there are some certain agendas. Some of these, especially the UNP, is very much happy about getting all this money pumped into Sri Lanka and to do something on in a positive way to address the issues related to the constitution, especially there are some attempts on the police reforms at the moment and constitutional reforms.
So you all said the UNP is very serious about these issues.
Yeah, the UNP is the economic management part of this good governance government is very much keen whatever the way they can get some money into the country, and they are doing.
Is that the right thinking? Is that the right thinking?
I'll say, I don't want to say whether it's right or wrong, but it is the way they are operating at the moment. The issue here, are we on the right track on these issues? The issue is that, we have with Rohan and myself during the first 6-7 months of the good governance government, we worked on the election reforms, and we helped the draft of the 20th amendment. There were such individuals get involved in. But here, from last August towards now, almost nothing has happened when it comes to the electoral reform.
I want to interrupt for a second, Mr. Nakon. I want to drag my attention to Mr. Laktalaka. Do you think the UNP is really serious about all this and more? According to what Mr.
This is now the context where he referred this answer to the question is different from the government perspective. You look, first of all, I have to say that most of these experts we are trying to import, right, has to go back to their drawing boards after this Trump's government. All these advisors, what they are going to give it to us, has to be rethought. That is what happening in the world's scene, right? So therefore, what I am saying is, my personal opinion is that although I am not a localized thinker, within Sri Lanka we have enough expertise to develop and apply to various reform processes what we are talking, whether it is police reforms or public sector reforms or constitutional reform, anything you name, we have enough human resources to be utilized.
For example,
but if somebody is bringing them, we have to think twice why it is.
When it comes to the constitutional reforms, we have talked about 2 decades on this, and when it comes to the police reforms, we are talking about police reforms for last 8 years.
The question is, Mr. Nakon, you're talking about the National Party who could not get a simple VAT bill passed in Parliament.
So that is the issue. That's where the expert, they have not consulted the Sri Lankan society.
Yes, my question is to Mr. Lakta. I'll come back to you, Professor. My question is to you. What is your real thinking?
No, our government has shown a lot of deficiencies. Right. Deficiencies in policy making, especially in planning. Planning is, from the beginning, we have bungled the whole processes. So now that law making process is one good example. Now we are currently we are experiencing another problem about development agency bill. So therefore what is needed is strategic thinking, strategic planning.
But the 58 vehicles that was to be given to parliamentarians.
All these things are.
The Secretary of Mass Media says the Prime
so that's why we are saying.
Resign,
that's why we are saying the people who, in cricket parlance, when we say like this, the bowlers who took wickets are not batting right now. That is the problem with this government.
Who do you refer to as the bowlers, and who do you refer to as the batsmen?
So that the viewers can presume that.
Yes, Professor Rohan Samaji, you want to say something? Yes.
Yeah, the issue is, if we have all these experts in the country, how come they have not been used so far, right? I'm an expert.
That is a leadership problem.
Yeah, but the issue is, it's not as simple as saying. Now let's be concrete. Let's not talk in abstract.
Rohan, are you serious about that question?
I'm very serious. Right now, electoral reforms. Kirti says we've been talking about electoral reforms for 20 years. I agree. But what have we come up with? We've come up with a cat's cradle of an extraordinarily badly drafted, almost unimplemented piece of legislation for the local government elections. It actually almost doubles the number of representatives.
Yes.
It's a mess. In my personal opinion, I would rather the thing would not be implemented, because it's such a chaotic thing. When we could have looked around, we could have looked at the examples in, for example, even in India, for God's sake. They have first past the post, but at the Gram Panchayat level, they have all kinds of special mechanisms to get women elected. We have experience in Taiwan, we have experience in New Zealand. Now you see, okay, we had the experts, but my question is, why is it that nowhere in those reports that came for the local government election legislation, those reports that came up, why is it in the Dinesh Gunawardena committee reports, why is there no study of what other people's experiences have been? So I can only come to two conclusions, that this was done completely with local experts, the local experts were not the right experts, or they were people who thought that they don't have to learn from the experience of anybody. I'm not saying learn from the experience of the United States. Learn from the experience of people who've done electoral reform.
So let's put the question to Mr. Laktilaka.
So he is referring to the previous government, because the Liyanage report, the local government laws were made based on Dinesh Gunawardena committee report. Dinesh Gunawardena committee report relied on Liyanage report. Susanta Liyanage report. Sudanta Liyanage report. So, but I don't subscribe to my good friend's suggestion that experts may have not emulated or followed
no, there is no evidence. Model. I mean, when you look at the Kannangara report, for example, CWW Kannangara report, I mean, it's a erudite document. It talks about principles, it talks about experiences. What we are getting now in these reports is just sort of some mechanical plumbing experience.
It's so much of
no, we should not forget the
really
context.
We
should not forget the context of that particular time period or era, because that is the time where the government was struggling to get the even simple majority to pass this, because the TNA said they are not willing to do whatever the constitutional changes in piecemeal manner, because that is the one reason. Then the UNP was also talking of towing another line. So the Dinesh Gunawardena report, I am not criticizing the Dinesh Gunawardena report, because it is a minimum consensus that ever made after 1977. There may be a lot of problems or difficulties or technical difficulties in that piece of legislature. It is the responsibility of us right now, because we know
us is who? Us is who?
The people and the technicians, the intellectuals, the technocrats, everybody must come together, because the 2015 January 8th we said we have to change the electoral system, because it is not good healthy system for our democracy.
Is it done in a haphazard way?
No. What is now, that is why we want to rescue the local government legislation. If we don't rescue it at this stage, then don't think about even changing the parliamentary election laws, right? It may be a difficult task.
If it is badly drafted, you think it still has to be
you can bring amendments. This is the democracy. If it is badly drafted, identify the difficult area and bring a necessary amendment.
Dr. Devasiri, we marked 2 years for the unity government this month, and we've seen how uneasy things have become. There are challenges mounting on the government. In your opinion, what would be the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, or the most likely scenario for 2017?
Well, the worst case scenario would be, the
collapse of
collapse of the government, and the Rajapaksas come back.
Are you saying that could happen?
Well, nothing is
permanent.
Permanent. I think that you cannot forget the fact that still the Mahinda Rajapaksa is the most popular leader, especially in the Sinhala Buddhist constituency, right? And so they have a formidable support, among Sinhala Buddhists. And so that's the single, the most the political formation that attract the people to one particular political project. When you go to an election, so there may be the different, scenario, but and their popularity also growing to a certain extent. But I don't think that that popularity is sufficient enough to win a national level election, because so their popularity also the failure, because they are popular only among one particular constituency, so they can get a sizable portion from that constituency. But you have a lot of the majority is so that's what happened in January 2015. Yeah, the best case scenario is that one of the positive sides of the last couple of years, that even though it was a turbulent time, that there are a lot of discussions. They're not. It is a democratic space by default. It is not by design. I don't think that the major players desired democracy, but it's by default.
Thank
because
you very much. Dr. we need to go in for a short commercial break. I'll get back to you in a minute.
Okay.
Starting off the fourth round, it's going to be yours, Charza. We'll start off from you. We go in for a short commercial break. Dr. Devasiri says that discussion is taking place. There is space, but is it all talk and no action? All this and more after a short commercial break. Stay connected. Stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is 2017. What is going to happen next? Let's start off the third round with Professor Rohan Samarjiva, founding chair of Learn Asia. Professor Samarjiva, I want to drag your attention to the local government discussion that we were having, local government elections. Why is it that all political parties now are somewhat fearing the polls? Why not say, okay, we are in power, local government elections is just another election, let's go ahead, let's do away with it. Why are they so concerned about it?
Because we are still in a feudal mindset. We have to get over this. In a mature democracy, you don't have a winner takes all conception, and every little thing is not a plebiscite. It doesn't challenge your basic fundamental legitimacy. You can have President Obama, who got his mandate as a president. It's a 4-year mandate, so he gets creamed. His party gets creamed in the midterm elections. That doesn't stop him from governing. They lose control of both houses of Congress. That doesn't stop him from governing. In fact, in mature democracies, what I've seen is that the people basically split their votes. I was living in Canada in the last days of the current Prime Minister's father, who was extraordinarily charismatic and powerful Prime Minister. I think it was in the 80s. And when he was Prime Minister, they had lost all the provinces. All the provinces were run by opposition parties. And his party, the Liberal Party, could not win any of the provinces. They lost. The Liberal Party lost. And now they started winning. The Liberal Party starts winning in the provinces. Because there's that balancing effect. You don't necessarily give all the layers of government to one party in a mature democracy. The voters essentially make sure that there are checks and balances, that it's not a winner takes all game. Unfortunately, in our country, every little, it's almost a joke. Some little cooperative in Kulyapiti or something is seen as some indicator of government popularity and legitimacy and God knows what. And the people who win that, if they are affiliated with somebody who doesn't even live in that area, is seen as some endorsement of that person's political position. This we have to get over. We have to have a situation where we have, like we have in the north, opposing political party. That's the only real opposition that we have. The TNA TNA, or what used to be the TNA, controls the northern province, and we have to deliberate with them, as Chiral says, and we have to work across these boundaries to come up with solutions. So we shouldn't worry about losing a local government election. So it's a big deal.
Thank you very much, Professor Rohan Samarjiva, founding chair of Learn Asia. I now focus my attention to Dr. Nirmal Ranjit Devasiri. Dr. Devasiri, Professor Samarjeev is of the view that it's just a local government election. Political parties do not really need to care about it. They should not worry about it. Just an election, and people are going to be anyway split. What are your thoughts on this?
No, as those who are outside this, the mainstream political, the competition, so it is easier for us to, say so, right? So, but when we are in the political game, so to say, it's not easy. Because I think I wouldn't agree with Rohan, because it's not necessarily a part of our feudal mindset. It is very much part of this modern, the way of, competing in politics, right? It is, yes, I mean, this mentality of winner take all, it's not necessarily, the feudalistic, it's a very much part of our, human thinking.
No, but he gave a very good example about the United States of America.
No, well, that's true, I mean,
just because Obama lost the two Congresses, that doesn't mean that he stopped governing the country.
Because the political culture and political consciousness of different societies, are not the same. So you cannot compare the political culture in the United States and ours in a
let's
way.
take India. In India, you have all kinds of things.
Yeah, it is not. It is depending on I think the case of India and the US is different. It is. See, these are historically evolved. The setups. The Indian politics. There's no something called Indian national. The politics. It's a regionally divided. So we have a situation where. So now, our politics is increasingly organizing in line of ethno-religious identities, right? And I think especially when you look at in the context of this ethnicization of politics, the what happened is that the parties who are capable of attracting this ethno-religious conscious the voters, so they have a upper hand, right? But for example, take the UMP for example, so they are less capable of attracting this ethno-religious the conscious constituencies, because therefore they cannot win these kind of localized elections. Right. So when it comes to national elections, so it is a matter of gaining support from various different constituencies.
I don't understand what you're saying, because the UMP lost since 1994 and only won in 2001.
No. Well,
and then they lost again in 2005 and
that also
so it does not really.
So you have to look at the certain changing dynamics of our party system. Our party system is fast changing. Now actually, evolving very fast.
Now, let's put it into very simple bolts and nuts here. Let's put it into context now. Let's say the local government elections 2017, if it's held, would it be a deciding factor?
No, it is going to be a deciding factor. That is exactly why they are afraid of it.
Represent the popularity of the incumbent government.
Yes, that's the
entire
case.
government or the people who
that's exactly the case, because this is going to be a sort of a referendum. So that is
problem.
Look at the whole system.
That's it.
Right,
Even
so
you mentioned this cooperative society elections also.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Devasri. I need to move to Attorney at Law, Mr. Shrival Akhtalaka, Coordinating Secretary of the President. You were quite vocal about what Dr. Devasri said, so let me put a question to you. You said that nothing is permanent when we spoke about 2017 and President Mahinda Rajapaksa is gaining somewhat popularity right now. That's what Mr. Tendakon said. Now, nothing is permanent. You are an individual who's standing with the President. You are the Coordinating Secretary of the President. When you are being pessimistic about 2017
that does not mean
for the
that I am
President,
pessimistic.
what does that really mean for the people of Sri Lanka? who voted
Understanding
for
the reality of the nature.
Right.
Reality of nature is impermanency, right? that does not mean that I am pessimistic.
What does that
If
mean?
you are a true democrat, and if you are not espousing a dictatorship, once you get elected, you have to understand one day you have to go out. If you try to stick into the power, right? Louis IV, the French king, said, the government is me. So that we have experience, or Louis the 4th or 6th, I can't remember. 14th maybe. So he now the previous regime also thought like that. So we are not thinking like that. We are not stick to this power, right? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That is what Lord Atkin said, right? So you can't construe my statement as a pessimistic statement. We are doing or asserting our best to maintain this system, because we want to implement good policies to upgrade, uplift this country.
Now on Friday, President Maithripala Sirisena met a UNP group headed by the General Secretary of the party himself, Kabir Hashim. They met at the Presidential Secretariat, discussed about issues and how to iron out problems with the party and government. And then a few hours later, another faction of the UNP wanted to meet President Sirisena. What is that for?
So now he is the president of this country. Any group, any MPs, any number of MPs come and get an appointment and meet.
So there are
It
splits
does not
within
mean
the UNP
anything. It's
as
deliberation.
well. Just as there are splits within the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, there are splits within the UNP as well.
Pardon?
Just as there are splits within the Sri Lanka Freedom Party now, there are splits within the UNP as well.
Maybe. I have no idea about UNP because I left UNP 2-3 years back. So I have little idea about the internal politics of the UNP. That is natural, no?
But the Sri Lanka Freedom Party split.
Yeah, it's obvious, no? I mean, there's a joint opposition members who are the SLP members who are supporting to Mahinda Rajapaksa faction, and another group is supporting the existing president.
Now
So
there
there is a split.
there is talk about a high-profile member of the previous regime being given a post of the present regime. Is that part of politics as well?
So you have to be specific.
Let me be specific. There are talk about now about the former Speaker of Parliament, Chamal Rajapaksa, being spoken to by the present regime at present, which is your party, that you represent, Sri Lanka Freedom Party. It's all
Are you, as a journalist, are you referring the source also? Then I can answer this question.
It's all
a rumor.
over. It's all over social
It's a
media.
rumor.
It's a rumor. It's a rumor. Thank you very much, Mr. Shural Lakhtilaka, attorney at law, also coordinating secretary of the president. And now, Mr. Kirti Tendakon, executive director of the campaign for a free and fair election. Mr. Tendakon, you voted in a new government because you wanted to see changes. You wanted to see people who are corrupt to be prosecuted. They should be brought before the law and prosecuted, and then, if found guilty, obviously to put behind bars as well. Will that happen in the year 2017? Will this deal-making culture still persist in the year 2017 as well?
Definitely, we have experienced during the 2016 throughout that the deal making was the issue when it comes to the fight against corruption. And we have seen that from Cyrilia bank account issue to Tajuddin's case, and then thereafter so much of issues happened. And then there was a statement came on the Rajapaksa family members getting investigated when it comes to prosecution, and then moreover the investigators, the police, CID, FCID was communicated with various channels by various politicians to stop the investigations or to manipulate the issue, the whole issue. And then we saw that the Siabok, the Executive Director General, was going out, giving her resignation after the President's speech, and then it came to the issue of Minister Sagar Ratnayaka giving a phone call to the IGP, and everything was well exposed. And the issue here, how can we fix this issue? There are technicalities if we are going to address the issue of fighting against corruption. We don't have adequate laws to fight against corruption, and when it comes to investigations, definitely we saw throughout last 2 years these political pressure is coming on them. And in the other hand, when it comes to the elections, the main two political parties, the UNP and the SLP, they always try to win the support of the party members for that matter. And that has led definitely, as Mahinda Rajapaksa during his regime time, he used election as a tool to manipulate the whole democratic process. Now, this government, President and the Prime Minister try to postpone the elections to keep the same momentum. So the final answer, final result, final consequences final effect on the people of the country is the very much same.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirtan Nakon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. So I let Charita open the floor for questions, but before that, Charita, with your permission, I just need to pose one question to Mr. Laktilaka. Is that okay with you?
Sure, but you need to give me time.
Absolutely, I would do that for sure. Ms. Laktilaka, you were the founding chair of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. You left the organization in question. Does the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election do the role that you envisaged as the founding chair? The man who is now in charge is on to your right.
You know, I left from CAFE because I entered into politics. Because my policy was at that time there should be a difference between civil society or demarcation between civil society.
Are they doing the job?
I hope so. That's why they are well respected, no? Within the society. I mean, their opinion is taken seriously.
Right, okay, Charita, all yours. I didn't take much time, just 30 seconds. There you go, it's all yours now.
Dr. Devasri, we were talking about the best case and the worst case scenario. What do you think would be the most likely scenario for the public to expect this year?
So there are three things: worst case scenario, best case scenario, and likely scenario.
Most likely scenario.
Yeah, well, the most likely scenario in my view, you know, this turbulent, you know, time, you know, persists some time, you know. I mean, there's no, I mean, likelihood that, you know, the getting a kind of new system in place in the near future, because, you know, the situation is that, you know, as I mentioned earlier, what can be called as the Onchon regime is, you know, the fallen apart, but, you know, there's no new order in place, right? So therefore, in that sense, there is a kind of organic crisis in the country, right? And no one can dominate the political system, so to say, right? So I think what we have to do is that, especially those who are you know, intellectuals, and, you know, those who are, you know, thinking rationally and serious about, you know, the political future of the country, you know, you have to make sure that, you know, we benefit from this scenario. So this is, as Shiral mentioned, this is not necessarily a pessimistic, you know, view, and, you know, there are different views. I mean, we are facing, I think, you know, some of the most important aspects of the crisis that we are facing are not necessarily, you know, the local, you know, the issues. So they are global issues. Take, for example, the economic, the crisis, which is at the center of the problems that we are facing. So these are, you know, the global issues. And so there are a number of alternatives being discussed. The already, you know, the existing, the models are being questioned. The most dominant one being the so-called neoliberal formula. So they are being, seriously questioned.
But how
Right?
long are you going to discuss? You need to deliver.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. That is, I think,
So,
do you expect some, limited group of pundits dictate the terms of an entire, the country? So that is not going to happen. So there are people with views, opinions, and expertise, and so on. Right? So that is what we have to,
Mr. Yes, I want to get your opinion.
No, for your question from Nirmal, now you are questioning about the issue of delivery, no?
Yes.
It's a rhetorical question. Now, it's in logic we say half full as equals to half empty. Now, if you look at the delivered public goods for the people by 2 years, I know there are criticisms, people are not satisfied, but there are so much of things have been delivered. Now look at the government economically supported the average people of the country. The first they reduced the fuel, then reduced the gas, then gave 10,000 rupees for public servants. Altogether, according to the Colombo index, the consumer index, they have got average of 15,000 rupees reduction.
But
therein lies the problem as well.
No, you can argue.
Devasri said
I
that it's a
respect for your
global
argument,
problem.
but what I am saying is now you can't totally reject the delivery of this government. There are certain things where they have done.
The government was good governance.
Yeah, good governance. Now
Yes.
look at.
So what about the delivery on holding people accountable?
Yes, there are certain black sheeps in this government. There is no argument. But as a system, but still you can point your finger.
You say there are several black sheep in the government.
According
Why
to
don't
the
you be
media.
more precise about it.
Now, according to the
Why
media,
don't you be more precise about it?
right?
You say black sheep in the government. You can be more
Now,
precise.
according to the media, even last
So what is
week.
the source that you have on
No,
this?
even Sathanda. Yeah, source is Sathanda. Sathanda went on with certain allegation, and we know that central bank issue. We know that the coal tender is. We don't agree, and we don't subscribe for those things. But still, you can point that particular issue and discuss. That is one freedom we got, right? So that is also delivery of governance. Then look at the structures. I agree. The independent system, the commissions were introduced, but they still lack the correct processes in decision making systems. But there is a structure. So likewise, there are so many things introduced.
You say that black sheep in the government. When I posed the question to you, however, I named the individual in question, but you refused to name it. So the joint opposition or anyone could say that's just a rumor.
Yeah, so that's why I didn't. As a lawyer, I cannot name without asserting or ascertaining that particular reported fact is correct or not. That's why I'm not referring his name, but it is a fact that it is mentioned in a public media.
No, the issue here, when, as Shiral said, when it comes to the reform agenda, yes, something has delivered with the 19th Amendment, and we are in the process of making a new constitution, the police reforms, and you can name something, and the freedom what we are experiencing these days is immense, and we have to respect for that. But in the other hand, when you go back to the very concerned factors, especially when it comes to the treasury bond issue, now today the president make a speech and he used the word the Gallanguru mafia, the coal mafia, and it was referred to the Petroleum Corporation plus the Ceylon Electricity Board. And when the president says that, he knew the issue, he know the issue.
Where did he refer?
Where did you refer? Yes. You probably
today media
have
reports were there was a I don't know what was the data. It's on media,
No, but
and
if
it
you're,
was
if you're
reported.
quoting the president here, you need to refer where exactly he said
So he
this,
said it
Gallagher
yesterday,
Mafia.
it's not
Where did the president say it?
It was on the media. It was on papers, and it was this word was used. Gallagher
Mr.
Mafia.
Ekon, you need to be very precise where you got, because you're quoting the head of state.
I'm not having that piece of paper with me. So basically, it was referred. What I'm saying is that now, within next 2 weeks, once again, the same company which make a burden to Sri Lanka taxpayers' money in numbers, according to the Auditor General's report, which was submitted today to the Parliament, 3.9 Sri Lankan rupee, billion Sri Lankan rupees was lost just because of that particular company. And once again, within next 2 weeks, of course, the LC is supposed to open on that for the same company.
And they're going to go ahead with it.
So if the people knows the issue, the politicians know the issue, it seems like the president and the other politicians, the cabinet of ministers know the issue, and there's a Supreme Court decision given on that.
But a badly written, ambiguous decision. So language is not clear.
So,
That's another point.
which brings me to my next question, Mr. Lakthiraka. I'm going to ask you this question as a lawyer, not as the coordinating secretary to the president. Minister of Special Assignments, Dr. Sarath Tamanugama, is currently spearheading a proposal to introduce a bill to bring back a criminal justice commission. Similar, I would expect, to what we had under Sirimao Bandaranaike to prosecute JVP insurgents. Now, we already have a judicial system in this country. There are allegations about the efficiency and the delays. There are questions about the delays in the judicial system. Is the answer a criminal justice commission? Isn't there a lot of room for abuse and misuse of such a procedure?
You are correct. We Democrats always oppose all kinds of archaic legislation. To me, like criminal defamation, the Criminal Justice Commission is a quasi-judicial body which empowers to convict a person.
So what is
so
the
therefore-
alternative? What should we do? Because you can't, at the same time, you can't continue to delay and deny justice.
No. I now, if you, I don't know. In this sense, the Rohan is correct. I don't know. These experts are whether they are going to study. You need to study or brief when you are proposing a policy. Now take Singapore. 1951, they introduced very stringent set of laws to eradicate corruption and malpractices. Now you need not to reinvent the wheel, right? Anybody who studies the Singaporean law can very straightforward manner, you can import it, can adjust it, adapt it and implement. So we need not to have criminal justice commissions, etc., etc. That Singaporean law is best example where they have curbed completely the corruption in Singapore. There may be exceptions. So I don't know why. I'm working on that. I'm studying and I'm trying to introduce this.
So then now I'll ask you a question
can I
as the
add
coordinating
something?
secretary president.
No,
Why isn't the government doing that? So given that there is an alternative to this possibly very dangerous.
It's matter of political will. At certain level, we see that not only any good government on certain issues, the political will may not come up as a result of ignorance, as a result of certain political maneuvering reasons. There may be several reasons, but there are group of people who are very consistent on that within the government, is always lobbying and pushing the government agenda to introduce this.
Professor Samarajiva, in an article you wrote several years ago, you say that the rule of laws, not men, is most conducive to the happiness of our people. So towards this pursuit of happiness, we are now looking at constitutional reforms in the country, a third Republican constitution. Since you earlier specifically asked for documentation, I will talk about something where documentation is freely available. There are several subcommittee reports released on the Constitutional Assembly website. We still don't have an interim document as was promised. There's a steering committee, there are subcommittee reports that are being released, but there is no concrete document to look at. How do you view this, especially given the political and social realities of the country?
Yeah, let me begin by what I meant by rule of law and rule of men. Under the earlier constitution, I mean our present constitution, for example, we are essentially multiple presidents, multiple governments have been implementing the parts they like. So for example, it's in black letter law that land and police rights should be with the provinces. There has been no court decision, there has been nothing which says that those sections are null and void. They are part of our constitution, but they have not been given. So that's why I'm saying we are not really following the rule of law. So one solution to this, I mean I've been reading up on this recently, is Mr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, the creator or the coordinator of the Indian Constitution. He came up with a beautiful document which was sabotaged by Nehru almost immediately by the 9th schedule, by creating some big hole to get land reform laws through. The beauty of the elegance of the Constitution was harmed by Nehru himself. Now the question is, should we get a law that we can live with? So to that extent, I favor some kind of constitutional reforms where we don't come up with a situation where we do not respect and follow our own fundamental law. I mean, what does it tell about us? That we don't respect our own fundamental law, right? I mean, why should anybody take our word seriously? As a country, as a government, as a people, when we ourselves, this constitution was not given to us by Solbury or Donamo or some foreigner, it was given by us. And we are choosing not to implement parts of it, right? So that's what I mean. If we are to mature as a society, we have to come to a situation where words, documents, constitutions, laws mean something. It's not, he's our guy, we can't do that, let's work around, let's do a fix. We shouldn't do that.
But this third Republican constitution proposed is supposed to be a people's constitution, where a public representations committee was appointed. They went around the country, all 25 districts, to get people's opinions. So are we ready for constitutional reform?
Well, you know, I mean, people's participation can never be complete. I can, for example, remember, right at the beginning they had an online website. And I actually put a number of comments on the online website. I like this online stuff. I don't like going and waiting in sweaty rooms and whatever. And they told me that they had lost all of them. And then would you put them back again, right? So, you know, there are imperfections in the system, right? But I think there's been an effort made to bring more people in. I was a law student when the 78th Constitution went through. There wasn't this much of consultation and so on. It was a rather top-down, you know, J.R. Jardhan and A.J. Wilson and a few other people pulled it together.
Mr. Laktilaka, I'd like to come to you with this next question. Now, we are paying big bucks to foreign law firms, etc., for consultation, for example, Baker and McKenzie, for the financial city project, the megapolis development. Do you think that our people, the people of Sri Lanka, need a reassurance that the topic of constitutional reform will also not run the risk of being outsourced to a foreign company? Can you give us that assurance?
I can't give that assurance because giving the
so we are at fear of that happening.
You know, I can give you assurance from the president's side. president's office that we will not embark upon for such a venture, because that is foolish and it will not bring any results. Because if you want to have a constitutional reform campaign, right, you have to understand the different aspirations of the society, and you have to manage it. So that is called campaign. It is not a rocket science. So if you closer to the hearts of the people, if you clearly understand different communities, different parts of the country, how they think, it's not a big issue. But if you try to import something against the wishes of the people, then it would be a problem. So then there is another question, where what do you mean by importing? What do you mean by importing? Because we have to understand in our Sri Lanka, as Rohan said, in India, when Ambedkar introduced the Indian constitution, India was much divided country than us, right? But they managed to introduce certain unifying factors to the system. Now, for instance, now if you take the word secularism, the way secularism used by Ambedkar and the way the British Wade or somebody is used in Britain are totally different. If you study the Ambedkar's history, or power sharing, the way we learn power sharing through Swiss model or the Canadian model or whatever the other European model, the way Indians Ambedkar introduced into India is quite different. So we can learn a lot from India how a true campaign can galvanize the support of various other communities. So I still believe that if we follow the correct path, we can achieve what we want through constitutional reform. But at the moment, I don't see that preparedness by the society, preparedness by the political parties to transform this country into such a situation.
Professor Samarjiva, the Public Utilities Commission has repeatedly warned of a looming power crisis. There's supposed to be an impending drought, what is your assessment of how the government is approaching this very serious issue?
It's tragic. I don't think we should have cancelled the coal plant at all. I think that is a big mistake. The tragedy of it is that we have made this mistake before and we paid for it. We paid for it in two forms. 2002 we were crawling around with formal load shedding. I can remember I had just come back to Sri Lanka and I didn't know what load shedding was, and I found myself in a place where there was absolutely no lights and I had to crawl out of my office. This happens because whatever we do, it takes about 4 or 5 years to build a new power plant, and we really have to understand that this time factor has to be taken into account. We have power now, but we won't have power then. So if we keep doing these things, and we did that, we paid for it in one way through load shedding, which causes incredible damage to the economy. There are enormous losses at our stage of economic development. And secondly, the only way we can get out of it is we have to buy emergency power. So as a result, Sri Lanka in 2012, 2013, when we actually looked at the numbers, had the highest energy costs in the whole region. We run around talking about the fact that we don't have major manufacturing in this country. One of the main reasons why we don't have manufacturing in this country is because our energy costs are very high. We have to bring our energy costs down if we are serious about manufacturing. And now we have made that same 1998, I can remember the Vayama election. Vayama election was when Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe was in opposition. He got together with the Cardinal and he said no Norachale coal plant. Mrs. Bandaranaike, Mrs. Kumaratunga said no coal plant in order to win the Vayama election. And we paid for it 3 years, 4 years later. So I think we are going to get that. I'm not getting into the conspiracy theories of people saying that we are creating conditions for the diesel mafia to make money. I'm not getting into that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying for short-term political gain and the short-term placation of some of the environmental groups who really don't think these things through. We are causing harm to our country.
Do we have the time to think of alternatives?
Well, I have a solution. Nobody's going to like it, which is that there's only one country and one set of engineers who can build a power plant in 2.5 years. That's Chinese. And they have talked about building one in Hambantota. They have talked about building it for their purposes, for the zone. Now, if you can get them to build it, and then when the crisis hits, say, give us the power.
So do you think the delay could derail some of our mega development projects like the port
Absolutely.
city?
Absolutely. I mean, we are on the way to getting 100% of our homes connected. But the point is, we must have reliable and low-cost energy. And we won't have that if we do this kind of madness where we will take out big baseload plants.
Mr. Tennakoon, do you think we would see tensions between the President and the Prime Minister escalating this year over the failure of holding people accountable?
The issue of accountable and transparency is becoming the keywords for this present government during the last 6-7 months. We have seen it. For example, as Rohan said about this Chinese investment coming to Hambantota, and how many people, how many economists know what is the exact documentation, what is the exact agreements which the government is going to have with the Chinese the entity, the Chinese company for that matter. There's no transparency when it comes to the very serious projects of this government. The document doesn't exist, and the issue here, there are so much of cover-up work has done. The other issue, now we are talking about the Volkswagen van, the car factory.
It's not called Volkswagen, European car manufacturer.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
How the land acquisition was taken place. And is this the Gota's way of doing things? Is repeating in some, is done by some other people?
Shall I correct what is he referring to? That particular land belonged to the public trustee. Not a personal property, public trustee. So
there is an issue, Shira. That's what.
When the government wanted to take over that money of the land, the public trustee has opposed to it and asked, if you still want that property, you can acquire. Acquiring means you pay compensation for the people who are subject to the trust.
The issue, when 2 years ago, by this time of the year, we were talking about Dubai Marriott and the hotels, the money coming from the Rajapaksa family and how it was invested and all that. And now, within next 3 days, we are going to open a factory, rubber factory, tire factory in Horana. How this particular lands was given and what are the agreements and who are what is the agency done that particular deal?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirti Tennakoon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. I wish I didn't ask the question first, Charita, because you took a lot of time from the 20 minutes that were allocated. Thank you very much for joining us as well, Charita. A very quick question. You are now in disagreement with Mr. Tennakoon and Mr. Laktilaka.
Why you are persisting? You are persisting a rift between Mr. Tennakoon and myself.
I do not in any way persist or incline towards a rift, but I just want to ask you again that question.
No, it is responsibility of mine. I mean, normally
to correct
when I sit for this kind of debates, I always sit as an individual. But when you referred me as a coordinating secretary to the president, I have to look into the interests of the state and the government. So that's why when it comes to incorrect references of certain things, not to defend, but I factually correct.
Yeah, he's clarified.
That's correct. That's what you do for a friend.
That's what you do for a friend. There are no friends and enemies in politics. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation, the final round. Let's focus our attention towards Professor Rohan Samarjiva, founding chair of Learn Asia. The global economy, it's confusing. You have Donald J. Trump going to take oaths on the 20th of January. It's quite uncertain and confusing as far as the global economy is concerned. 2017, Professor Samarjeeva, how do you view the global economy against the Sri Lankan economy? Are we going to see some implications, or is it going to be a very good run for the country and the world?
You see, let's not get hung up on particular individuals and particular countries. What are the larger trends? The larger trend is the rise of Asia, of the Asian economy. The center of gravity of the world economy was Asia. It was China and India until, say, even the 17th century. They were the big economies, and they went away from being the center of gravity, from being the powerful economic centers, to being two of the poorest countries, with famine and pestilence and people moving in their millions, dying, civil wars, all kinds of things, right? So Asia is coming back. Now part of that, I think, is, you see, there's a new order emerging. Well, as the new order emerges, we don't really know what the shape of the new order is, but we can definitely say that it won't be centered on the United States. And given so far the exhibited behavior of Mr. Donald Trump, it's going to be a rather messy decline. The decline will take some odd forms. There will be possibly some kind of incredible economic tensions with China, and I don't think they can kick around China like in the old days. China is a powerful country. So it is in this context that I think it's very important for us to think about our region, about the Bay of Bengal, which is where we've got 6 of the fastest growing economies in the world, and about the Chinese market, and about China as a source of investment, and of India as a source of investment, of exports, markets. We have to think about Asia rather than rely on these unstable places that are quite far away from us. They have been unnaturally our principal export markets, because the natural thing is to trade with countries near you rather than countries far away. But we have been trading with Europe and with the United States, and they are getting protectionist. And don't believe me, protectionism is going to harm us. It's going to harm we are a very small part of the market, but when they start putting rules against China, against India, some of the collateral effects will come on us. So I think it's high time that we start understanding that we need to diversify our markets, we need to look at our region, and we need to go with Asia.
Thank you very much, Professor Rohan Samarjeeva. It's quite insightful to have you on the show and bring that new thinking. Thank you very much for joining us this evening as well. And now I focus my attention to Dr. Nirmal Ranjit Devasiri. Dr. Devasiri, what are the challenges that this government faces in the year 2017? What must they really focus on? What are their priorities? Your time starts now.
I would like to look at the issues beyond the limits of the government. I think I see there is the larger challenge that the Sri Lankan political, the system face, I would say, since 1975. The 75 in the sense that, maybe because of my political bias towards the left, since the LSSP left the United Front government, so there is the new system in place. The governments are increasingly dominated by a group of elites. This actually, this strengthened, this was institutionalized after 1977. So at the expense of the democratic the system, right? So that's led the way to a kind of increasing authoritarianization, the authoritarian system. So now actually, so there is a new political elite, so these I think we are talking about the corruption and all kind of the negative things. these can be linked to this elitization of politics. So I think one of the meanings of the January 8, 2015 revolution is to reverse this trend, to bring politics back to the people, right? So I think so our challenge is to make sure that we proceed in that direction, and to make sure that the government is representing the will of the people. I mean, not through just the popularity of the certain individual, but through a kind of the political dialogue, as Shiral said, through a process of deliberation. I think that is a challenge. That is the very meaning of the change that has been taken place.
Thank you very much,
Yes.
Dr. Nirmal Ranjit Devasri, for joining us this evening as well. First time on the show. Thanks a lot for joining us on the first show of the year 2017. I now move my attention to Mr. Kirti Thendakon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. Mr. Thendakon, what changes do you want to see as a civil rights activist, civil society activist in this regime, in this government? What are the changes you envisage?
I mean, when it comes to the government, people had very high expectations, and those expectations were not made. And when it comes to the fight against corruption, number one, and when it comes to the reforms agenda, the constitution, electoral reforms, so the military and police reforms are key issues. The public sector needs reforms, for that matter, delivering something people-friendly and creating a people-friendly environment is the key issues when it comes to the government. But here, it's also the civil societies had a very big role on this. This government is having so much of issues, so much of areas to be addressed, and it is the role of the civil society to keep them remind that you have promised these things and you have to deliver on these promises. And if that is not happening, I think the issue, the government simply will go out of their track, which was promised 2 years ago. The other factor is that, I mean, the individuals, the organizations, civil society is having a very big role when it when it comes to the good governance perspective. And that good governance perspective, the fight to keep the openness, the transparency, and the space for a dialogue is the key. And that space, if that space is sinking, definitely we are having a problem. The deal making factors and the giving the maximum exposure to the corruption issues and try to put them on the right track is the challenge for the civil society when it comes to 2016.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirti Thendakon, for joining us this evening. You've been very vocal over the last 1 year on many issues. I have another question for you. You have the founding chair of your organization seated on your left. Are you happy with the way in which the coordinating secretary of the president is now doing his job?
I'm so sure my good friend knows his job very well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirti Thendakon. That was one of my efforts to have each of them criticized, but did not work exactly as I deemed.
You got instruction from somebody?
I did not. Mr. Shiral Lakhtalaka, what you speak about instructions, I am confident that you represent the regime, you stand tall as the President's the President's coordinating secretary. How do you view the President should act in the year 2017? Will he take a more proactive approach to the issues that we would be facing? Would he really execute his executive powers in the year 2017? Would we see him sitting on the driving seat and driving the vehicle of Sri Lanka towards success? What sort of changes and how do you view the President's role should be in the year 2017?
No, there is nothing called the role should be. already the president has started his role as the president. Now, if you look at the past 2 years, if you take from the parlance of war, even if you finish a battle, you have to continue with few flush out battles to clear the area. I think the president has spent 2 years by bringing various reforms and creating a society which is based on democracy, decency and civilized manner. So that 2 years spent over those values. Now, as you correctly or incorrectly reported when we started this discussion, that you posed a question that today the president through a gala event started another program called Sustainable Development. There was no gala at that point. I have to clarify that also. That is the proactive policy that has been thought of in last 1 year, and very clearly set out goals, and now we have launched that program to achieve the necessary development, human development, the physical development in together to take the country towards particular end or development end. Now, as Rohan said that 2017 or towards 2020, we are moving from European centric development to Asian centric development. Most important thing for us is to think about our own economic model that brings necessary resource, development resource to the people. That's why we have adopted, the president has adopted this ecocentric civilization to be achieved in 2030 if we can. So that needs particular economic model where we need to eradicate the poverty, enhance the nutrition levels, go back to the sustainable energy sources, improve the productivity of the public sector as well as private sector. There are so much of things where we can talk under this sustainable development goals. So that's why he has launched that, and we are quite sure that president will lead this country towards sustainable development related human, eco-friendly human civilization.
Thank you very much,
Mr.
Laktalaka, the Coordinating Secretary of the President, was silent for many months, and today to be vocal. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, Ms. Laktalaka, and being vocal about the role of the President as well as what you think, your opinions are about the country's economy, the new order, as well as how we should move forward. Thank you very much, Professor Rohan Samarjee, for joining us this evening, Mr. Keith Pendakon, Attorney at Law, Mr. Shival Laktalaka, as well as Dr. Nirma Ranjit Devasuri. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen, on the show tonight. Thank you very much, Nadim. Thank you very much, Sonali. And thank you very much, Charitha, for joining us this evening. A question and advice as well as the future. The question is, there is global uncertainty as Asia is now emerging, Asia is rising, and where is Sri Lanka going to be positioned in the year 2017? The advice is the new order should be established, which was envisaged on the 8th of January 2015, and accelerate the fight against corruption. The way forward, flush out battles are needed to clear the space, and that's the only way that we will move forward in the year 2017. The government seems to be having a vision for the 2017 year. Are they really formidably looking at the challenges ahead? How will we end the year? Can we end with a positive note? There is a lot of optimism in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has a growth potential. However, action is required. Discussions alone won't take us to our target. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I usually do. Last year's words are for last year's language. Next year's words await another voice. Voice? Whose voice am I talking about? It may be yours. Take care and good night.